Hello everyone, I'm Beth if you haven't met me before, and I head up Alpha here and also the leadership development here at St Swithin's. And so this morning, as Vicky and Ben have said, we're starting our new series on raising generations, heroes of faith. What does it look like for the whole church to play their unique part in raising up and releasing rising generations? And last week, Jim talked to us about how God has placed the rising generations as arrows in our hands and challenged us on what we're going to do to raise them in the boat and to launch them into the vision that God has already given them. So this week, I want to begin to talk about how we can do that. Now, have you ever missed out on something because you just didn't see it? I am so guilty of walking straight past people in the street and not saying hi just because I didn't see them. Have you ever had someone point something out to you on the horizon, maybe like a really important building, a rare animal of some sort, maybe it's a deer, maybe it's a unicorn, and you try and you follow their gaze, you follow where their finger is pointing, you listen to their instructions, it's over there, just a little bit on the left, it's behind that tree. After a while, I find it's easier just to pretend that I've seen it. Oh yeah, that looks amazing. And maybe you were completely fooled by our cheeky little video earlier and you didn't see that mouse dancing away in the background. I feel like that might have been quite a lot of people. But often in our relationship with God, he gives us a little nudge to say, have you seen this? Or what about looking at it like this? Often when we read the Bible and when we pray, God shows us a different way of seeing ourselves and others and the world. And it's usually better than our way, right? If we're honest, it's a more truthful way of looking at things. In our reading, we heard about Jeremiah being called by God. God called Jeremiah to be a prophet in the Old Testament. A prophet is someone who listens to God and speaks out what God is saying to the people around them. And this is what God tells Jeremiah his task is. Today I appoint you over nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to pull down, to destroy and to overthrow, to plant and to build. It's a pretty big task there he's got. Jeremiah gets to be the one who tells the Israelites that they've not done a very good job of just worshipping God. So they're going to be punished. Some bad stuff will happen. But then after a while, he'll build and he'll plant again. So it's not all bad, but it's a big vision and it's a huge task. And guess what? The Bible tells us that Jeremiah wasn't a leader. He wasn't even an adult. The Bible says that when God calls him, Jeremiah says, "But I'm only a boy." Can you think of a time when you felt too young or too inexperienced to do something God called you to do? What do you think that God saw in you that you didn't see? But as we keep reading, we see that just because he's young, that doesn't stop God from thinking he is exactly the right person for the job. God has already told him that he was chosen before he was born. This was God's intention for him. And he tells him he doesn't need to be afraid. He's going to be with him and he will deliver him. He sees everything about his personality and about his character that would make him a great prophet. But hang on, what Jeremiah says is that he can't speak out. That's a problem, right? How can he be a prophet when he's admitted himself that he doesn't know how to speak? But God is literally not interested in that. And why? Because it's not what God sees. He sees a young person with so much potential, with the potential to be brave, to stand up against what's not right. He sees the potential of perseverance, to keep going when things are hard. He sees the potential to listen to God and obey what he's told, even if it doesn't make sense. He sees his heart. He sees much deeper than the surface level. God's perspective is so much broader and deeper than ours. He's wide-minded, not narrow-minded. What could be, not what's not. He knows how he made each person with their strengths and their gifts and their abilities. Now, if I hold up this apple, what do you see? Anyone? An apple, yeah? What else? Shout it out. Red, yeah. Anything else? Nice to eat, definitely, yep. When I look at this apple, I see seeds with the potential to grow into a tree and produce more fruit. And then more trees, and then a whole orchard, and then we could make apple juice, and we could make cider. When I hold up my phone, what do you see? A phone, yeah. Sorry? A lot of stuff. What's that stuff that you see? Internet, yep. Calculator, yes. Of all things, a calculator. Wow, that is why I've got a phone. When I see my phone, I see the potential to connect to many people. There's lots of people in my phone book I could connect with, but then way wider than that, the internet, social media, is a place where I could have a voice to stand up for what I believe in, and then impact, and then thinking about what the impact that could have on others as well. Okay, look around you, see if you can find a child around you. What do you see when you see that child? Anyone willing to shout out? Any potential? Yes, love it, yes. When I see a person or a child, I see so much potential with their unique gifts and strengths, a personality perfectly suited to the vision that God has got for them, to be able to make a difference to those around them and the world around them as well. Now, can you think of a time when you've had a great idea and that idea has been crushed or dismissed? What did it feel like? And what happened to that idea? When I was a teenager, there was a project called Soul in the City, and the vision was to gather young people to do community projects and chat to people about Jesus all across London. When I heard it was happening in my home city, I really wanted to get involved. So I took the idea to my youth worker, but he wasn't interested. He didn't have a problem with me doing it, but he said he wouldn't help. Now, the thing was, I would have had to organise it during my A-level exams, and I didn't have a clue if I could manage them both at the same time. And I also didn't really know where to start with organising it. So it didn't happen, and I felt kind of hurt and disappointed and let down. Someone who I thought would see what I saw didn't. I thought he would see the potential and the difference that it could make in people's lives. But what if someone had been interested in my idea and encouraged me in my vision for helping others, spent a little bit of time helping me with my time management, given me some guidance on those first steps? How many people in our area could we have helped and blessed? How many people could we have had conversations with about Jesus in our little pocket of London? The impact wasn't just on me, it was so much wider. Thinking back to that question about the great idea that you had, what would be the difference if when you had an idea, it was encouraged? Do you know that in the passage, this is what God does? He calls out to Jeremiah, "What do you see?" Not only did God see Jeremiah in a different way, he wanted to know what Jeremiah saw. So going back to this apple, I could take this apple and I could eat it and it would be tasty, but then it would be gone. Or, on the other hand, I could try and break it in half. Yes, worked. I did cut it first, I have to admit that. Inside this apple, I could carefully take out the seeds, which are inside. I don't know if you can see that. Tiny little seeds. And I could plant them, and I could water them, and I could look after it until it grew into a tree and produced its own fruit. What is possible if we as adults see rising generations the way that God sees them, full of potential, full of vision, full of gifts and skills? And what is possible if you, our rising generations, know that we want to hear what you see? We're not just interested, but we're curious because we know that your perspective, the way that you see things, is so important to God. So it's important to us as adults as well. And maybe as adults, this feels a little bit risky. We're not sure what they might come up with. Or maybe as a young person, you're thinking, I'm not really sure if what I see is worth saying. Remember that Jeremiah started off really unsure and really inexperienced. But with God's help, he grew in boldness and experience. We don't need to be the best at something just to give it a go. So let's give it a go and trust that God will be with us as he promises. Because the thing is, we don't have the whole vision for us as a church when we don't see people how God sees them, and when we don't know what everyone, no matter what their age or their experience, sees. And we won't know until we learn how God sees and until we ask, what do you see? And I truly believe that when we do, our vision will be so much bigger, far wider, and much more exciting than it would have been. Now, this week I sent out an email to the parents of our rising generations, asking them to ask their kids and their youth, if the possibilities are endless, what do you see God doing in our church, in our city, and in our country? Here are some of the responses. All over the world, people would see things happening and recognize that God is amazing. People in our church would see God doing things in their families. God would make people happy instead of sad. Okay, so what are our next steps? Do you need to ask God to help you see our rising generations how he sees them? Do you need to ask him to open your eyes and see their potential? Could you ask more questions, be curious, and encourage curiosity in others? Is there someone you can ask, what do you see? Or ask a parent, what do your kids see? Is there someone who you can encourage and get alongside, support them in their vision? How can we support each other as a whole church family? Or if you're a rising gen, can you try listening to God and then be brave and share what God is saying to your parents, to your leaders, or even Jim? Tell us what you see. We really want to hear. What is possible if we see rising generations the way that God sees them? What more would we learn about God and what he sees over our church, over our city, and our country? What difference would it make to our church and our city? Who doesn't want people all over the world to see things happening and recognize God is amazing? Who doesn't want to see God making people happy instead of sad? Is that what you'd have come up with? Yeah, it sounds great, doesn't it? So let's get curious and get asking, what do you see? And then we can work out how to support what they see. Let's stand and we'll pray together.